Hey everybody, this mini lesson is focused on in-text citations and finding relevant evidence. Right now, I really want you to get yourself in a headspace where you're willing to sit up, listen, pay attention, and take a really great set of Cornell notes. In front of you, you should have a printed version of some guided Cornell notes that we will expect you to be filling out all throughout this particular mini lesson. So the first thing we want to talk about is what is relevant evidence. And so on your notes, I want you to take a look at that space and I want you to write down what relevant evidence is. Relevant evidence is something that is directly related to a claim or a thesis statement. So one more time, relevant evidence means that it is directly related and supports a claim or a thesis statement. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a handful of examples and then we're going to talk about where in-text citations kind of fit into this. So if you take a look on your screen, you'll notice that I have a small article here. It's only 3 paragraphs. That's what you're seeing here. And so what I want you to do is I want you to start out by finding the relevant evidence that goes with this particular claim. So you'll notice that this article is about a straw hat riot of 1922. And so my claim that I'm making, which a claim, just so that you know, and you can add this to your notes as well, a claim is always something that is completely in your own words. It is a single sentence that is completely in your own words. The claim for this is, if social media had existed, the straw hat riot of 1922 would have been trending. It's a factual statement. It is a complete sentence. It is focused. So what I want you to do right now is I'm going to ask you in just a second to pause the video. I'm going to ask you to look through this particular section of text over here, starting it at the end of each summer and ending with wear the hat of their choosing. I want you to read those 3 paragraphs, and your job is to fill in the sentence stems that are on your notes. You'll see something similar on your notes as you do on the screen with the 2 details from the article that would directly support this claim. I'm going to ask you to pause the video right now and complete that. Now that you're finished, let's go ahead and check your answers. So when you were reading through this, hopefully a couple of things came to mind. First of all, the fact that if social media had existed, we're looking at why this would have been trending. One of the particular pieces of evidence that you should have pulled was that thousands of people fought, many to great injury. You'll notice that I had included quotes, and what that means is if you're taking something as a quote like that, you are taking it word for word. So if you did not do that on your notes, I want you to go back and you can even make a note next to what you wrote down and say, if it's in quotations, it should be word for word from the text. That's what we're looking for when we're looking for evidence. So this is a really good piece of evidence that would directly contribute to or support our claim. The other piece of evidence that you could have pulled out is that if people didn't make the switch, they were reportedly ridiculed and even risked having their straw hats stolen and stomped on. Now, if you flipped those 2 and maybe you put this particular piece of evidence in this location and this particular piece of evidence in this location, that's totally fine, right? Now, the context clues that you can see both show that this issue is extreme and this is why people were trying to rally around the cause. So it doesn't matter to me if you flip those out, but these 2 would be the specific relevant evidence that would go along with this claim. You'll notice that we didn't include every single thing from this entire article here. What we've done is we've just picked out the most important pieces that fit here. So what's awesome about this is that this paragraph gives credit through quotation marks, and the works cited entry here is only on your screen. It's not going to be necessarily on your notes, but there is one more piece that is necessary, and so we're going to go through and we're going to add that. What you're going to do now is we're going to watch this video about what in-text citations are. As you go through and watch this video, I want you to add to your set of Cornell notes all the way through until we pick up with the next section.
When you write a research assignment, it's important that you acknowledge the ideas or quotes from other sources that you use, right when you use them. Not only does this show that you're an honest and ethical student, but it also tells the reader exactly where you found that awesome piece of information. So, how do you give credit to other sources in your assignments? You use in-text citations, which can also be called parenthetical citations. An in-text citation connects information you're borrowing from a source to a citation in your bibliography, which helps teachers and classmates understand where the information originally came from. Include an in-text citation in your paper when you use a quote word for word from a source, or when you borrow an idea or phrase from someone else. In-text citations have to be written in a special way. They require 4 things in this order: an open parentheses, the author's last name, the page number that you found the information on, and a close parentheses. In-text citations are placed inside the sentence, so make sure that the period is outside of the parentheses. If you are using a source word for word in your paper, you need to put quotation marks around it. This is called a direct quote. Let's say that I found a sentence on page 20 of The Giver by Lois Lowry that explains an important part of the story. If I take all or even just part of the sentence word for word and put it in my paper, I would need to include quotations around it and add an in-text citation, like this. Let's say you want to explain something that happened in The Giver, but you explain it in your own words instead of taking it straight out of the book. This is called a paraphrase, and while you don't need to include quotation marks, you still need to include an in-text citation. This will give credit to Lois Lowry's writing and let your teacher or classmates know where the event happened in the book. Remember, make sure that the first word in the in-text citation matches the first word in the citation of your bibliography. That way, when people want to learn more about the source in your paper, all they have to do is look for the same word in the bibliography to find it. Let's review. The in-text citation takes readers to a specific citation in your bibliography, and the specific citation tells the readers where they can find the piece of information you used. There are special rules and exceptions for using in-text citations, so if you're unsure, check with your librarian or teacher, just in case.
So in review, an in-text citation is just a brief reference in your text that indicates what source you consulted. And again, you can go back and you can add this to some of your notes based on what you had pulled out from the little mini video that we just watched inside this one. An in-text citation should direct readers to the entry in your works cited page. So in your notes, you'll notice that there is a section focused on the fact that your first word in your citation needs to match the first word in your bibliography. Bibliographies are also often called works cited pages, so you can add that to your notes as well. An in-text citation should be unobtrusive, which means that it should not take up a lot of space in your writing. We want it to be small. That's why it's only the author's last name and then the page number. Or if there's no author's last name given, it would be whatever that first thing is that shows up in your works cited. Often it would be the title of your article. So we want it to take up as little space as possible so that it's not interrupting your text. And then in general, like we said, it's going to have the author's last name with a page number, and then it'll be in parentheses. So here's an example, and on your notes sheet, I want you to add notes all around this example as we talk through it. One of the things that students notice when they're looking at this is that these 3 in-text citations that are circled here are formatted differently. All 3 are in fact correct. So you'll notice that Wordsworth, or William Wordsworth, is the author of this piece. But when you look at the way that the sentence is worded or the paragraph is worded, Wordsworth is given credit right at the beginning of the first sentence. So here's what I want you to add to your notes. If the author is given credit in the sentence, then the author's last name does not need to be in the in-text citation. So again, if the author is given credit, then you do not have to put that in the in-text citation. So since Wordsworth is here in this first sentence, it's only the page number that exists in your in-text citation here. The next sentence, you'll notice that Wordsworth was not given credit. So it just says romantic poetry is characterized by the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. In that case, you would need the last name back here because Wordsworth was not given credit. In the final sentence, you'll notice that Wordsworth is mentioned again and therefore is not included in the in-text citation. So make sure that you've written on your notes why the name Wordsworth is or is not included in each of these. Let's take a look at another couple of examples. In these examples, which you also have in your notes, you'll notice that Kenneth Burke is responsible for the information that has been taken. Sometimes the essay will provide, or what you're writing will provide, a signal word or phrase, and that's usually where the author's either full name or last name will show up. So what I want you to do is in your notes, I want you to put a box around where it says humans have been described by Kenneth Burke as. That is the signal phrase in this particular sentence. Well, because Kenneth Burke is mentioned right here in the sentence, you'll notice that the in-text citation again is only the page number. Whereas the second sentence here, humans have been described as symbol using animals. It's just a different way to say that same sentence. In this second sentence, there is no signal phrase. And so because there's no signal phrase, you need the author's last name and the page number. Again, I want you to have written kind of all around those to describe what we were just talking about here. The final thing that I want you to add to your notes is what a signal phrase is. A signal phrase is something that sets off or sets the reader up for upcoming evidence. There's actually going to be a handful of examples that we give you for these in the upcoming days, but I want you to make sure that you have a signal phrase written here. It will also be good after this video to potentially go back and add some examples of signal phrases to your notes as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to tie all these things together. So what does it look like when relevant evidence is paired with correct in-text citations? What I want you to do is I want you to take a look back at the very first paragraph that we looked at. So the one that has the claim, if social media had existed, the Straw Hat Riot of 1922 would have been trending. When we look at this particular claim, we had already identified the evidence that went with it. What we had missed, however, is the fact that it needs an in-text citation. Well, if Chris Weller is our author, then on your notes, you'll notice that there's kind of a blank space before the period with that paragraph. I want you to go ahead and add in the in-text citation. Do that now, pause the video, and then continue to play the video to check your answer. Hopefully, you wrote, in parentheses, Weller 1. The 1 comes from the fact that if you are using a website as your source, obviously there are not going to be page numbers like there are in a book. What you want to do if it is a website is you would just use the number 1 for your in-text citation because it is all happening on page 1. Let's dig into a few more examples. So for your first example, I'm giving you a new claim. This claim is that phone booth stacking was a dangerous trend. What I want you to do right now is pause the video. I want you to read the text that is over here on the left, just like we did before. I want you to find 2 pieces of relevant evidence that belong with this paragraph and include the in-text citation. Pause the video, complete that work on your notes, and then continue to play the video to check your answer. Okay, hopefully you've entered those. Let's take a look at what the answer would be. So the 2 pieces of evidence that we were looking for are cram their bodies into the narrow spaces like olives in a jar and stacking themselves horizontally. Again, obviously these both could be flip-flopped, so if you said this one first and this one second, that's fine. And then that in-text citation, you'll notice that we had already put the parentheses there for you in your notes. You just needed to add Weller 1. Now, as you're taking a look at this, and I want you to make a note of this over on the side in your notes, is that everything that's in black on these in this particular little sentence is my own words as an author. So what's in black came from me. So the claim, they are all my own words. These things that I wrote here, all my own words. The only thing that I am borrowing from my text is direct quotes. Those are what's in pink that goes along with and supports the main claim. Let's take a look at our last example. So again, I want you to pause the video here. I want you to find evidence that's going to support even orchids were able to launch a frenzied trend. Go ahead and read this piece of text, fill in the blanks, and pause the video while you do so to then check your answers in a minute. Okay, now that you're ready to check your answers, this is what it would have looked like. So you'll notice that according to Weller is right here. This is a really great signal phrase that you can go back and add to the signal phrase examples in your notes. So according to Weller, the ultimate status symbol was orchids. So that would be the piece of relevant evidence that we were looking for there. This is because people all over Europe were desperate to get their hands on them. People paid exorbitant prices. Now for this one, you could not have flipped these two pieces of evidence, and you'll notice it's because paid is right here. So we would think about paying going along with this price. And so you'd want to make sure that this one was down here. Another thing that I want you to point out, or I want you to put in your notes, is that you'll notice that we're not putting complete sentences as our pieces of evidence in these paragraphs. We are only grabbing the piece of text that is directly related to what we want to say. The focus is on this black text, my own words as an author, supported by what's in pink, which was our evidence. So when you are writing, especially informational pieces, you want to focus on 60 to 70% of what you write, and add this to your notes, please. 60 to 70% of what you write should be in your own words, supported by 30 to 40% direct evidence from your texts. The last thing that we're going to take a look at is this graphic organizer. And so if we would have put everything together in an outline or an organizer, it might have looked like this. We've already included the thesis statement for you, plus we've included the evidence on your screen. What I want you to do is I want you to add those 3 claims in those claim boxes, and what I want you to note on here is that this would be a main idea and details text structure. I also want you to note that when you look at this and when you think about organizing your own research, which you may have seen some presenters already start this with your collaborative study groups, it may be something that you are going to be heading into. Either way, it's really important to know and to have this as a background, that when you are doing this, it doesn't matter what you start with. You could start with your claims and then organize evidence underneath those claims as long as that evidence is relevant and specific to those claims. You can also just start by organizing your research. So pulling together the most important, the most significant pieces of evidence that you find, taking them word for word so that they are in these quotation marks, and organizing them around main ideas, and then seeing what kind of evidence you have to support before going ahead and writing your claims. Either way is a really successful way to approach organizing your research, but no matter what, when you're finished organizing your research, and again, it doesn't matter if you're doing an outline or an organizer, this happens to be just an organizer, but you want your thesis statement to drive everything that you're doing. So some trends in history would have gone viral in today's society. Every one of my claims is a trend from history. So all 3 of these are related to my thesis statement, and then each of these claims themselves could not only stand alone, but then are directly supported by that evidence. So all of these pieces work together, and that's how you organize your research. That's how you blend your evidence in with your writing, and then that's why those in-text citations are so important, so that by the time that you have a finished, completed piece, you have writing that is 60 to 70% you, 30 to 40% supported by experts, all of your in-text citations, signal people as to where you got your information, and then at the end you include that works cited, which is the longer, more complex version of how to access where those sources came from. If you will use this process and really dig into the things that we've talked about today, make sure that those things always from now until forever exist in your writing, then you're going to be set up to not only be able to build credibility for yourself as an author, but also to be extremely successful in many, many writing endeavors in the future for your education. Your notes at this point should be finished. What I want you to do is go ahead and wrap up with your summary at the bottom of that last page. By the time that you're really looking at these notes, make sure that you have, highlighted, underlined, added notes to your, of your own. Make sure that you've completed any blanks that were there. Feel free to add any questions, and know that you will need to make sure to keep these, because we will definitely be coming back to them and having them out as you are writing in the future.